Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Soft Skills Engineering. I'm Jamison Dance.
And I'm Dave Smith.
And we're here to talk about everything besides the technical stuff that goes along with engineering.
The everything else.
Yep.
So, how are you doing, Jamison?
I'm doing well. I've got the Tom Waits cold, which makes me sound like Tom Waits. And that's
sweet. It's an enhancement.
Yeah, it's not too bad. And I didn't have to gargle vodka or whatever he does.
I'll be honest, I actually don't even know who that is.
Oh, well, he sounds like, how would you describe it? He sounds like the Cookie Monster. Like he sounds like death metal vocals, but if he's singing to jazz.
Okay.
It's kind of interesting.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, Jamison.
Yes.
Why are soft skills called soft skills and not hard skills?
Oh, jeez. Some of it might be because of that stupid engineer bias where everything besides machines working together is boring and lame. So the hard stuff is what's important because it's harder to do. I mean, that's totally wrong, and that's why we're doing this podcast. But
or maybe is it because of hardware and software?
Yeah, it could be that. Your brain is software stuff.
Meatware.
Wetware.
Wet. Oh yeah, wetware. That's a thing, isn't it?
Yep.
They should call these wetware skills.
Yeah, I think that's what we'll call it when we arrive at the cyberpunk future.
Well, we're here at episode 2, and we've survived 1 week.
Yep.
It's great. So thanks to our 3 listeners, including Jamison's mom.
Yep.
It's really, really great to have you on the show with us.
She said it was great. She really liked the show.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Dance. So I had one piece of feedback from our first episode from a listener named Evan Ferrer. And you may recall that last week's show was about, one of the questions we answered was, how do I know if I should engage in an opportunity to join a startup or something, or my friend has a crazy business idea and wants me to join, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Evan said that he wished we had mentioned one thing, and I want to share with you what he said. He said, I hope that in the answer to the first question that you would point out that sometimes people expect that their only contribution to a new company is coming up with the killer idea, and that you will then do all the work and put in all the time, and they will keep a sizable portion of the company. Lots of people have killer ideas. They're a commodity. So says Evan. So thanks, Evan, for that. What do you think about that, Jamison? Do you think he's right about that?
Yeah, I think he's totally right. I guess my assumption was that this person would be in it for the long haul with you. But if they're just hey, no one's ever thought of Craigslist, but only in my small hometown, and you go build that, then that's kind of obviously you don't want to work with that person.
Yep, I totally agree. So thanks for that, Evan, and thanks for listening.
Yep.
So you may have noticed our format from last week. We take questions from you and answer them on the air, but I think Jamison and I would like to take a minute and just tell a little bit about ourselves. So you can know whether, I don't even know, maybe we're just a couple of guys off the street with ideas, but we have a background in this stuff and maybe it's worth sharing.
Sure. So I kind of came late to software. I didn't start programming until my sophomore year of college, just on the recommendation of a friend. So I wasn't one of those wonder kids with a calculator building games at age 7 or something. But I've been doing it for almost 10 years now. I've worked at a few different places. I've been just kind of a team member. I've led teams, and right now I'm working at a place called Kowali, where I build open source education software with a small team of other people. That's kind of my background.
Cool. I have a pretty similar background. I got into programming actually my sophomore year of college as well.
Oh, cool.
But that was
a different year, though.
I've been working in the industry since 2003. I've worked for basically 4 companies since that time, varying amounts of time at each company. I've been a team lead. I'm currently the director of engineering at HireVue. Got about 30 developers and a dozen or so QA people whose efforts I'm responsible for coordinating and serving. So I've, not been around forever, but certainly not fresh blood, as they would say, right? Sure. No, fresh meat. That's the right term, isn't it?
Fresh blood.
Sorry.
As the vampire development community calls it.
My soft skills are not that strong, basically.
Part of soft skills is using the right words.
Okay, so why don't we start with our first question, Jamison?
Yep, I'll kick it off. So the question is, I work on a team and I am not the team lead. I have lots of ideas for how to do things better. How can I influence my team without being the team lead or without stepping on his or her toes? This is a really, I assume this is a really common thing because there are fewer team leads than there are team members. So this applies to a ton of people.
Yeah. And good for you, by the way, for having ideas for how to do things better. That's great.
Yeah, that's true. I have been guilty of being just like the lump of inert metal that just like sits in his chair and is like, man, it sure sucks when we do this. Too bad there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah, I'm totally helpless. I'm just along for the ride.
Yeah, so that's cool. My first thought is a propaganda campaign with like that Obama style hope.
Hope and change.
Hope and change and unit tests is what maybe your slogan could be. And you just post them up around the office, and then maybe you start some rumors like, wow, that Mary person, she's got ideas. Have you seen the posters that not her, that someone besides her put up?
Yeah, Mary definitely didn't make those.
Yeah.
That's a terrible idea, Jay.
Yeah. So I've set the bar low. What do you got that could top that?
So I've been a team lead, and I have to tell you that as a team lead, I love it when people come to me with ideas for how to do things differently. In fact, every team I've been on, I will ask this question repeatedly, like, hey, what can we do better? And currently, I meet with about a dozen different engineers in monthly one-on-ones, and I always ask them, like, hey, what can we do better, faster at our company? And I've actually been recently asking questions like, if we could tear down the whole organization and all the process and build it from scratch, like say you're supreme leader for a day, how would you build it? And it's actually very rare that people have ideas when you approach them that way. So when people come to me out of the blue without being prompted, I love it. And I think the best thing to do when you have ideas like that is to go to your team lead privately and say, look, be respectful of the position that they're in. Don't undermine them, and especially like if you're sitting in a team group setting, don't like say, well, that idea is really dumb, or like our team lead doesn't know what he's doing. Those can be really undermining and toxic on a team. So the best thing I've found is you go to the team lead privately and say, hey, I love what's going on in the team. I love being on the team, and I have a couple of ideas I want to share with you that I think will make it better. And I think most people will respond very well to that.
Yeah, I know that when I was a team lead, one of my big fears were that people were just silently unhappy with the way things were.
Yeah, me too.
And they were like, man, this Jamison doesn't know what he was doing. If he only did this thing, like, tell me that thing. I would love to know what that thing is.
Yeah, definitely.
Since I'm the person that says the dumb things, another bad way to do this is just like stick it in. So we talked about like kind of just jamming React into your project last time. And if your idea is use React, again, a bad way to do that is just use React and submit a pull request. It's like, here's this feature. I hope you don't look at the package.json because it changes stuff.
Yeah.
Because doing that in kind of not a systemic way can often lead to just half-baked ideas kind of scattered around the code. And that makes it harder to understand than if you had just one core principle, even if it might not be the best way to do it. If you're consistent, there's a lot of value in that.
I agree. And also when you sneak an idea in, it can really backfire because your idea carries along with it people's opinions. So like if you approach someone and say, I'd like to try this idea, and then they get on board and you try it together, even if it's a terrible idea, somehow those ideas will go farther and do better. Whereas if you sneak it in, even if it's a great idea, you sneak it in and you kind of go around the team is likely to reject your idea, even if it's the best idea ever.
Oh, I have that exact thing happened. So this was at I would call it my first real job. I was working with someone who's very smart, who I respect, and has influenced me a lot today. And this person was way into functional programming before I was, and was all about Haskell, and they kind of just like took a feature and totally wrote it all themselves, and it worked great. But the code was in JavaScript, but it was completely like all in on functional programming, currying everything, partial application everywhere, All these concepts that I wasn't familiar with at the time. And the team just got so mad at him because it wasn't like here's some cool ideas we could try. It was like just this code bomb in our laps, and then we kind of had to maintain it later. And every time we didn't understand it, we just raged, which was not a good way to deal with it. But
yeah.
But any new idea is going to have downsides, and if you're not bought into the idea, you're going to hate it that much more when you see the downsides. So,
and the hate might sometimes trickle over to the author. Of the idea, and that's when things go really bad.
Yeah, and I mean, I think functional programming is a good idea. It has lots of new concepts, though, and a bad way to introduce them is to just like airdrop them on someone and then say, "Good luck looking up what this function does," because
incoming. Yeah. Oh man,
yeah,
that's so bad. Yeah, so don't do that, even if it's a fantastic idea in your mind. Also, you might be wrong. You just might be wrong. It might be a bad idea.
Yep.
Right. Which is why I like to, whenever I propose a new idea to a team, I like to also include an escape hatch, and that's a metaphor. But I say, look, team, I want to do this idea. If it doesn't work out, here's how we're going to bail on this idea. You know, like, so for example, I want to try Kanban instead of Scrum. You know, maybe we're like a hardcore Scrum shop, and I say I want to do Kanban instead. And so as an escape hatch, I'll say, let's try Kanban for 2 weeks only and limit it. And then I'm going to schedule a meeting after 2 weeks where we can assess whether things are going good. And I usually would, as a team lead, you could just do that. But as like a non-team lead, you'd need to go to the team lead and work that out, and then let the team lead bring the idea to the team. I think that's actually really important that you respect that like authority. And I'm not like a huge top-down kind of guy. Like, I like ideas to trickle up from the bottom, but for some reason these ideas tend to work better that way. So anyway, escape hatch after a couple weeks, or if it's a code thing, you can say, well, here's our plan to get out of this if it goes bad. Always include that, and then I think the team is more likely to go like, all right, and get behind the idea and really rally if there's an escape hatch and they don't feel like they're going to be stuck.
Sure. One more thing I'd probably consider if I were doing this is that there's always a cost to some idea, and the cost might just be the education cost or the cost of changing the existing code to match it or something. Sometimes when you get really excited about something, it can be hard not to be zealous about it, where you just see it as the pure good and there's nothing wrong with it and there's no downside. But there is some downside, and just yelling like, but this is better, that won't really solve anything. So you need to recognize that there are still trade-offs associated with it, even if the trade-offs are just teaching everyone the new, better way to do stuff.
Yeah. I mean, best case, that's at least there, right?
Yep.
Totally.
Yeah.
The other idea I had on this one was when you're bringing a new idea to your team, it's really important to separate your ego and your own self-worth from the idea. So that way the team is free to reject the idea without rejecting you as a person. And so I found a few phrases I use to help go through this process. Like whenever I pitch an idea, I'll like try to say, look, I'm not married to this idea. And I say that up front so that people know, okay, if it's a bad idea, they can share their reservations with me without feeling like they're going to hurt me. And that gives people permission to be honest. And I think that helps a lot. So you can say things like, I think this might work. I think it might be pretty good. Here's my case for it. It might not work. I'd like to try it out and see if it could be good for our team. Right? So those kinds of phrases are much better than, hey, this React thing is way better than this Backbone thing we're doing, and we need to do it like right now, because then it's like, well, you're the React guy,
Yep.
You're married to that idea, and if we reject that idea, we reject you, and no one really wants to be the rejecter.
Yeah.
So separate your ego from the idea.
Yeah. I had a thing I was gonna say, and it's gone.
Ooh, that's a good technique.
Wisdom was lost.
I'm sorry. Was it about hope and change?
No. Okay. Not directly. I mean, everything I say indirectly is about hope and change. Oh,
so I have one more.
It's gone.
I have one more idea on this topic. And
I'm all out. Share. I'll
maybe as I'm talking, your idea will come to you.
I hope so.
So when you're proposing change or new ideas to a team lead or to a team, I've found that it's best if you can do so in bite-sized chunks. And this goes with the escape hatch idea. But you say, I want to try this in a limited fashion. I want to do like a prototype. I want to build something small or do a small feature this way, or just say, I want to have just a few people on the team do this new process. Whatever the idea is, make it small and bite-sized. Don't force the team to go all in on your new idea, because then when you go all in, the risk level goes way up, right? And so if you fail, it can be like a catastrophic failure instead of just a small failure. There's this awesome quote from, is his name Kent Beck, the Agile guy?
Uh-huh.
He said, even the most catastrophic plane crash is not so bad if you aren't that high off the ground. And I'm totally paraphrasing that, but basically he's saying you can crash the plane. If you're only 3 inches off the ground, it's not going to hurt, right? Your plane can crash. And so if your idea crashes and burns, but you only really got a few feet off the ground, then no big deal.
Sure.
So I would say that.
So instead of listening to what I'm sure was a great point you just made, I was thinking about my point.
Good.
Just kidding. I was listening. But while I was listening, I remembered it. I think there can also be different phases of a project. Sometimes you might want to just try a bunch of crazy things all at once, kind of like scatter ideas out to the wind.
Sure.
You've heard maybe the let 1,000 flowers bloom. But then after that, there's eventually some phase where you want to consolidate on some core ideas. And I think that can be a good process to try things out and know that, hey, we are going to refactor some of these things that turn out to be bad ideas. We're going to refactor away. But hopefully we'll arrive on a better ends point than if we had just stuck with something without trying anything new.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a scatter gather type thing.
Yeah. And if you're gonna let 1,000 flowers bloom, you're gonna have to prune.
Oh yeah.
A bunch of those ideas.
Yeah.
Like 950 of them, right?
Yeah. One of my friends is kind of leading a sibling project at the company. And he's in that phase right now. And it's actually really, really cool to see where we tried all these crazy things and now they're kind of consolidating and cleaning up. And it's making a big difference in how easy the code is to work with.
Cool.
My last suggestion is just be a worm tongue and kind of like be the power behind the throne. And if you can ensorcel the team lead and manipulate him or her, then that might work too.
Put them under your spell.
Yeah.
But don't be a jerk about it, like worm tongue.
Well, don't let anybody find out. I think it was fine until he was discovered.
Everything was great until he was discovered.
Yeah.
It's true. So, So in fact, I have found that it can be a really great place to have a lot of influence, but not necessarily have all the responsibility.
Oh, it's so good.
Like lead.
It's so good. That's
so
a good
keep that
point.
in mind
You don't
if you're
have any
jealous of your
stress.
lead's power.
If it fails, you're not on the hook. You just brought the idea up to the team, and then it didn't work out. It
wasn't my fault. Your idea sucks, team lead.
It wasn't my fault that you were too foolish to appreciate the true majesty of writing everything in white space. Should we move on to the next question?
Yeah, let's do it. I'll read this one. This is a short one, but I think we could talk a lot about it. I've got a few stories. But
Yep.
Okay, so the question, shortly worded, is how do you deal with anger at work? And, I think everyone gets angry occasionally. Sometimes you're on the receiving end and sometimes you're on the giving end. And so we should just explore this and see where we go.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jamison? Have you ever been angry?
One or two times. I think the first thing to note about this question is there's a difference between maybe transient anger and a toxic environment. And if you work in a place where people are angry all the time and one of the accepted methods of communication is just like yelling and insults and stuff, maybe that's fine for like the military, or I don't know. There are probably places where that works okay.
Boot camp.
But yeah, for me, like it's time to pack your bags and move away. You are not responsible for fixing that environment.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Unless you're like the CEO or something.
Sure.
But if not, just bail. Like there's nothing that's worth suffering through an environment like that. So that's kind of a preface to it.
So let's put that environment aside and say that, let's deal with like the more not insane.
Yeah, where
culture.
people are friendly and happy, but there's just some tension going on or something.
Yeah. So I've got a story Should I tell?
Please.
I was working on a project, and it was my first time being a lead of a pretty big project. We had probably like 20 people working on it, and I was technical lead for the project on the software side of it. And there was like a more senior team member who was responsible for my project and several others. And since it was my first time, I'd go to him a lot for suggestions on how to proceed. And we were selling products to a customer who required a pretty heavy degree of documentation and process and stuff and rigor. And so I had just been in this guy's office, and I was talking to him about it, and he was like, okay, it looks like you're good. And he was helping me through some of the processes and stuff. So right after that meeting I had a meeting with the whole team. And I sat down, and there's about 20 engineers in this room. And I'm standing up at the front of the room, and I'm saying, okay, we're at the point now where we need to move away from our documentation phase and into, like, let's start laying down the code and getting this product built. Right? This is a very waterfall company at the time. So it's like, we're done with the design and documentation. Now let's move on. And we really need to move. I emphasized that we needed to move out of documentation and into the like coding time. And for whatever reason, this really rubbed this guy wrong, who I just had that meeting with. He came with me into this next meeting. And he stood up in front of everybody and pretty much yelled at me in front of the whole team. And it was so humiliating. And I just felt so stupid because I had just been in his office going over the project plan, and it's like he had all these problems with the project, but he waited to tell me about them until we were in front of everybody instead of in private. And it was just humiliating. So that's an example of what I would say, don't do that to people.
Yeah.
Wait. If you have criticism for someone, you're angry at someone, do it privately. Like, you owe it to them to communicate to them, usually especially if it's serious, but do it in private. And you'll save yourself a lot of hurt.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm still licking my wound.
I mean, I don't think anybody reacts well to public humiliation.
Yeah.
So I have a story. It's kind of related to the last point, actually, about experimenting with the new ideas and kind of tech choice and stuff like that. So, recently at work, we were experimenting. We were talking about experimenting with some new front-end technology. And we talked about it all as a team. There was going to be a small group of people that actually worked on the project using it, but it was part of a larger team. So we kind of got the larger team together and talked about it and talked about the pros and cons. There's some downsides, there's some risks. But we kind of talked about mitigating those risks and whether we thought it was acceptable or not. And we came away with the decision to proceed in kind of an experimental fashion for a few months and then reevaluate later on. And that was going okay. I think it was going pretty well. There were some minor issues, but nothing earth-shattering, I feel like. Mm-hmm. But people that weren't on the project, I think, had some underlying concerns that they didn't feel like were resolved at that first meeting. So there's kind of not anger, but some I don't know, some I can't think of the word right now. That's just what kind of day it is. Some reservations. Yeah, some unresolved reservations that kind of kept coming up. So partway through this trial period, we ended up having another meeting to resolve those. And we ended up deciding to just scrap the project and start over in a new, less risky technology. Okay. And I did not react well to that at all. I didn't like rage or blow up or anything. I avoid conflict pretty as like my primary rule of existence. Okay. So I wouldn't like yell at somebody ever, but I was so frustrated by that.
Until pushed hard enough?
No, I don't think so. I would just like pack my bags and move away. But
I'm out of here.
Yeah, but I was so frustrated with the way the decision went down and so angry about it. And I just like disappeared into my little cubby and put death metal on my headphones. And
did you just kind of fume?
Yeah, I did. I just fumed for a couple days. I didn't get anything done because every time I sat down to write a line of code in the rewrite, I was like, this is so stupid. We were so much further along. It'd be so much better if we used this other thing. It was going great. I had all these reasons. Yeah. And the team reacted so well. Like they noticed that I was
They're like, "Where's Jamison?"
Yeah. Why can we hear music through his
Yeah.
headphones?
I usually can't hear the death metal.
And then
but
why,
now
when I
can.
look over his shoulder, is the song called "The Satanist"? That's weird. That's not usually the kind of genre that he listens to. And
Poor
so
Jamison.
people kind of like noticed and pulled together another meeting where we were able to productively resolve our concerns. And it wasn't ever personal anger. It wasn't like I'm mad at this
Okay.
person. So there wasn't that tension of like interpersonal conflict. It was just me being upset at how the situation worked, and then the team responding really well by like not. I mean, they could have been like, "Man, Jameson's really petty. I hope he gets over it," or they could have ignored me,
sure.
or they could have.
Sure.
And a lot of different things could have happened, but I feel
Oh
like
yeah, that could have gone toxic bad.
yeah, and I feel like because the people I work with are very nice and are good at the soft skills stuff, they noticed, and then we were able to arrive at I think both a good technical solution and also a good like interpersonal solution. So there's a lot to be said for kind of knowing your team well and paying attention to their mood and noticing when
yeah.
decisions that you think are resolved aren't actually resolved, because that happened a few times in that story. And I think we would have been worse off if we had just never had the second meeting again, and we would have also been worse off if we never had the third meeting where everything kind of got resolved. So
And good on your teammates, because sometimes it's really hard to read other people, especially when there's a slightly bigger team, 5 or 10 people. It's like pattern matching off each of those people's behavior every day, and then noticing an outlier. That can be really hard.
Yeah.
So good on them for noticing.
Yep. Yeah. Another thing with that story is when I was mad, I was totally useless. I got nothing done for 2 days. And some people I think can kind of like rage code. But I cannot.
Use your anger.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a cost to anger beyond just the tension it creates in the team, which is that it's hard to be a productive member of the team if you're really upset about something.
And that can become a vicious cycle, right?
Yep. Yeah, because then you get talked to about not producing, and then you feel
even more frustrated, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's rough. Well, good on your team and good on you. Now, if you could go back and do anything differently, do you think you would?
Yeah, I think part of this was caused by my aversion to conflict, because I didn't stand up as strongly as I felt. And so I kind of just let this decision happen that I disagreed with, because I didn't want to to create tension or conflict, which ended up creating more conflict down the road.
Yeah, paradox.
Yeah, so I think if I had stuck to my guns a little more, I either would have been, I think, convinced and actually accepted the solution, or I would have convinced other people and then avoided a couple days of Grumpy Town.
grumpy death metal town.
Yep.
All right, well, I have a story.
Please share.
Two times in my short and illustrious career, I have yelled at someone at work. Twice. So I'm not proud to admit this, but I'm going to tell one from about 10 years ago. And anyway, this is you don't hear a lot of these stories because people don't usually air their dirty laundry like this. But here you go, on the internet
Forever.
Yeah, fortunately, this is just our mothers and a few close friends who listen to this. But I was on a little project. It was a one engineer project. It was me. And then they had a manager who was responsible for the finances and the schedule and stuff. And at this particular company, we had a really strange financial incentive system. We were working on billable hours, which means that we charged the customer for every hour of engineering time. And there were sometimes, I think we called them like money would turn into a pumpkin, which means like there was a time limit on how long you had on the calendar before that money would disappear. So if you didn't burn up the money, then the rest of it would be gone. And so my manager...
So you had to bill a certain amount of hours or they wouldn't pay that chunk of money?
No. It was more like, we have $100,000 to give to your project, and you have until June to use it. And if whatever you have left when June comes around, we're just going to keep that.
Okay, that makes sense.
So it's not a fixed price. It's like, we're going to pay you by the hour, but if you don't spend enough, we're going to take our money back.
Sure.
It's weird. Okay,
yeah,
this was weird.
That sounds like a weird incentive already.
I can tell you more details later. It's kind of weird. So I was chugging along on this project, and the manager comes in and says, I'd like to add so-and-so to the team to help it go faster. And I'm like, no, that will not work. this particular person they wanted to add would not have gone faster. They knew they would have needed a lot of ramp time. And I had actually had some bad experiences with this person in the past. And we were late in the project. Like, we only had a few weeks left. And so it's like, there's no way at this late hour adding someone is going to help. Now, sometimes it does help, but in this case, I was quite confident that it wouldn't. And the manager pushed on me really hard. Like, come on, you just got to let this guy join the team. Why aren't you letting him join the team? And I cracked and I was like, stop it. Like, I'm not going to let this guy join the team. It's not going to help. And I actually raised my voice at him. And when I did that, he like backed down immediately. He was a much more senior person, and he could see that I was not in a good place emotionally. And so he basically walked away at that point, and I felt pretty bad, but not as bad as I felt the next day when he came and apologized to me. And he basically said, I'm sorry, I understand where you're coming from. And I was like, oh my gosh. Have you ever had someone apologize to you, Jamison? And you're like, no. I'm the one who should be apologizing.
Many times. Yeah.
And so it's one of those where I was just totally humbled. I felt so bad about yelling, and it was just dumb. But I was so angry, and he was pushing, and I didn't understand this broken incentive system at the time. I was really junior. Like, to me, I was like, I want to build a great product and have it done on time. And to him, he was like, I want to get this money or we're not going to get it, And so both of us didn't understand each other. And so the result was anger. So I'd say, if you're ever really angry at someone, take a moment and really try to understand their motivation. And this can be hard, but until you do, you're going to just be mad because you're going to think, you can just think, oh, this person's just dumb. Right? Like, they're doing dumb stuff.
Or even worse than that, you can ascribe to them some kind of manipulative motivation.
Yeah, like foul play.
Yeah, like
right?
they are trying to make themselves look better for a promotion, and sometimes that's the case, and that might not be a bad thing, but you could be totally wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I was like, I actually just had no idea what this guy was talking about.
He just wanted to make your day bad.
Yeah, he's like, this guy just hates me.
Yeah.
It's very unlikely that someone just hates you, right?
I think an interesting common thread in those stories, well, in the two, I guess, successful anger resolution stories are kind of kind and empathetic teammates that are willing to solve the anger problem. And maybe that's where the solution comes from, that if you are angry, or if you are working with someone else that's angry, someone needs to kind of step up and be humble and figure out what's actually going on and apologize if you need to, even if you're not convinced that you're wrong. I mean, someone kind of needs to diffuse the situation because it won't resolve itself well on its own.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the natural inclination, the inertia will take it to a bad place.
Yeah, and even if you kind of calm down, or the other person kind of calms down, there's still that kind of lingering resentment that will stick around if it's not fixed.
Yeah, and you have to just step in and say, I'm going to cut this off.
Yep.
And so I would say that the advice that I would give people in this situation, which is not advice that I have taken myself very well because it's hard, is when you feel yourself getting angry, try to step out of the situation and stop and think about the other person's perspective and try to figure out what their motivation is. And make that your challenge instead of saying, like, how can I win the anger match? You say, how can I understand them? And I think you'll find it's a lot easier to resolve these conflicts. It doesn't always work.
Yeah,
I've had a couple. I've had one other instance where I'm like, I tried and tried and tried, and it just couldn't get it to work out. But it can.
I think the other solution, or the other takeaway we've had, is that you yelled at somebody and you got your way. So
problem solved.
Yeah.
The volume of your voice is key.
I say that in jest, obviously, because the benefit of getting your way does not outweigh the cost of using anger to get your way. Like, long term, that's going to kill your team, and
you'll win the battle, you'll lose the war doing that.
You'll quit, or you'll get fired, or a bunch of other people will quit, or it won't work out well.
The ripple effects.
Yep.
Well, that's all I have for that, Jamison. Do you have anything else?
No, I think that's about all I got.
Well, I've got some announcements.
Please.
Soft Skills Engineering is on Twitter. We are a real grown-up podcast. You can find us at Soft Skills ENG. We'll be posting links to shows as they become available there. And we are on iTunes. which means if you are on an iDevice, you can just go to the podcast app and search for Soft Skills Engineering, and we will come up. And I suspect for Android users, you might be able to also search using your podcast app of choice.
Yeah, iTunes is often used as a kind of directory for other podcast apps, even if they're on Android or not associated with Apple at all. So we should show up on most podcast apps now.
All right. That's all I had. So, Jamison, how can people get in touch with us if they would like us to answer one of their questions?
I think we should ask them to tweet it at Soft Skills Engineering. That seems like a good way. Or
tweet.
If you don't like that, just tweet at either Dave or I. I'm Jergason on Twitter, Jergason.
And I'm DJ Smith42 on Twitter. And again, you can tweet us at SoftSkillsENG on Twitter as well.
So you said that thing about iTunes, but you didn't say the traditional second part, which is if you like the show, be sure to subscribe and give us a rating. People,
I don't actually know where to see said ratings. So
I think they affect your ranks in the different categories. So if more people subscribe and rate you, then you get a higher rank, which means more people listen. And as you can tell, we've got 0 sponsors, so that won't affect our lives at all. But we just want people to listen to the show.
Yeah, and then let us know if we can help. And, if there's any questions you have, we would love to answer them.
Yep. All right, thanks.
All right, thanks, everybody.
See ya.